everybody has the same question in mind. Is that what is going to happen to my job? What is happening to the industry? Is AI actually going to replace the human creative process?
Welcome to episode 3 of the Shootsta Unscripted podcast. Today, my special guests are Shootsta employees. We have Luke, head of Shootsta Academy, and we have Andras, the creative director of Shootsta Premiere. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Excellent. You were already here, by the way. Today, I want to talk about AI tools, specifically AI tools that we're using in our everyday workflows. And maybe a little bit of speculation on where they could be going in the future. Because the last 3 years have been a wild time in AI, as everybody knows already. But what a lot of people may not know is how much of an impact or how much of a change it's made in something like a company like ours, like, a video production company, for example. Obviously, it's affected all sorts of industries, but if we can talk about maybe one piece of technology that you guys are using frequently and elaborate a little further on what the future might hold. Who wants to go first?
After you.
All right. It's a pretty big topic. We aiming to cover here, I guess. So it's not even one question. This conversation on that specific topic could go on forever, but instead of just picking one specific AI tool, I will definitely use an AI tool, but I would more want to address the elephant in the room, because with all these changes and everything happening nowadays, everybody has the same question in mind. Is that what is going to happen to my job? What is happening to the industry? Is AI actually going to replace the human creative process? And I think if we start the conversation from there, then we can address the specific tools and examples in a pragmatic way that we use as an example to illustrate the conversation.
Well, let me ask the question then. Will AI, again, this is probably a very broad question, but let's start with has AI replaced jobs already in the traditional sense that maybe they existed a few years ago?
So I think AI is the same with any other technological advancements. The first thought is always replacement. But then it's more of an in-between, an evolution and replacement of some roles and some parts. So I'm pretty sure it did replace already some roles, but I more think it's evolving different roles and different processes. Let's say when book printing in the 1500s, anyways.
I think it was something like that, 1500s, yeah.
Yeah, so when printing came out, that replaced scribers. Scribers were the people who used to spend hours and days literally copying books by hand, so therefore books were very expensive. So that was a replacement of that specific, very niche role, but general books and printing and content, in a sense, just evolved. It never got replaced, but those specific roles related to those specific practical functions, they got replaced. So I think in this way as well, AI helps us evolve, and most importantly, I think it helps us democratize the creative process. Because same way, let's say another example is music production. Before electronic music production tools, we needed studios, we needed very expensive instruments and bands, and had to book and record things, and it was a tedious, expensive process. And then digital music production tools came out, and it democratized the process of music production. It didn't absolutely replace it, it just evolved it. And now circling back to video production and what we do in content production, AI I don't think it's going to ever replace completely humans in the process, but it definitely democratizes production. And what I mean by that is, before, let's say, to pull any level of VFX, like even just a couple of years ago, that required a big crew, big budget, and years and years of experience to actually produce any level of VFX. And as technology improved, it's becoming easier and easier. And now with VFX, now with AI and other different tools, they're insanely helping the process and making it way more cost efficient. The same way with scripting and any other kind of content production. But what I think is the most fundamental change here is research, and from a creative perspective, because if you think about it, AI can synthesize an insane amount of data and information that was previously almost humanly impossible to go through. So it's been trained on billions and billions of data points, and it can recognize all different patterns, and we just couldn't do that. So in my personal opinion, doing all that research for me, and then I can curate and decide what I want to do and what kind of creative I want to develop, that is an insane amount of help. It doesn't mean it replaces my taste and my curation and my human touch on the process, but definitely speeds up the process and giving me a lot of different perspectives as well, what I would have never thought about before.
Interesting. Luke, what's your take on all of that?
I agree. I agree.
Okay, well, how about this? Going back to the music analogy, right? You said it democratizes music in a way that it's accessible to everyone, right? Just because it is accessible to everyone, do you think it should be accessible to everyone?
I think it being accessible is a great thing. Yes, I think everyone should have access to use these tools and experiment, because we are all, like in my mind, we are all absolutely unique creatures with unique experiences and unique patterns and thought processes and all these different things, and our intuition and personality, and just like myriad, like an infinite amount of combination of variables. So I think any person should be able to express whatever they have deep inside their intuition or brain or whatever they feel like they want to express. That's not necessarily a problem. I'm not saying we have to amplify it, but they should have the tools to express it. That's not a problem. I think also there is a big difference. There's a big difference between commercial, creating something with a commercial purpose, or creating something for the sake of human fulfillment. We are living in a capitalist driven, most Western countries and developed countries, they are driven by capitalist principles. So that the efficiency and the value of the creative will be determined by the market. But if we do something purely from a human fulfillment perspective, that's a totally different question. So just an example, I'm not very musically sophisticated. I have to say it. I'm really visually, I really love visuals, and I know music and audio is a super important part. But so here's an example. Back to the example of the digital music production. Just because I can produce music now very easily with a digital tool, and then don't need the whole band and instruments and all these different things, could I make a masterpiece? Probably not. But I have access to it, so I can play with it, not a problem. Will anyone want to listen to my music? Probably not. But that's a totally different question. I have access, which is a great thing. It doesn't necessarily mean the radio should stream my music.
So I'm going to come at this with the perspective of a musician, but it's applicable in all creative avenues, right? I play guitar. I've been playing guitar for 25 years. I had to put hours and hours and hours of practice in every day. If someone wants to listen to me, they're appreciating that. Now, someone can do that on a computer. Someone can make music on a computer, and it can be complicated. It can be very creative in the same way. It bypasses 25 years worth of practice that I had to do. And they may well write a song that becomes famous. Do you think that by doing that, you're compromising the overall quality of the arts or creative?
Okay, I think it's just because everyone wants to listen to something doesn't necessarily mean it's the highest of quality. So and also who determines what the quality is of a piece of creation? If you look at even movies or top hits of music, it's probably going to be quite a controversial take, but what the masses like to listen to is maybe what they can comprehend and understand the most, not necessarily the highest authenticity.
It's mind-numbing.
It's mind-numbing, and because there is a formula. So if you, it's going to be another controversial take, but if you look at a lot of hits in the movie industry, all the like the Marvel sequels and everything is rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, and rinse and repeat. And so that's probably not going to be the most authentic and most artistic expression. That's what I'm saying. That's commercially driven in a capitalist society. So, and people most likely they just want to have easy entertainment, like cheap calories of entertainment, and they get it. And they're happy with it, and they enjoy it, and they're happy to pay for it, and that's amazing. That serves a very different purpose than going to see the Mona Lisa or any fine piece of art.
So we have the creative perspective. Luke, from a workflow perspective, you've been doing this since mini DVs, maybe?
I'm not that old, but I appreciate that sentiment.
So you've seen enough of a change to understand that this is playing a big part in the last couple of years. Has it made things easier for you? Has it replaced jobs? What's come out of it in the last 2 years?
I think for me, like in terms of workflows and stuff, I've really seen AI just speed up the process of getting things done. And also, as Andras said, it makes things more accessible to people who don't have access to essentially big budgets to be able to pay for lots of different people to do stuff. And so part of that is like, democratization of skills and stuff for you to be able to actually create things that you dream up in your head, but you never really would ever have the chance to create it in real life. And so in a lot of ways, I find AI just been really, and technology in general to be really handy just over the years, making things more accessible for people. And I think some of the biggest things has just been the ease of being able to film. And one thing really simply is just the introduction of autofocus. And now with like AI kind of playing a role in autofocus to be able to kind of detect people or kind of detect the subject that you're looking at, detecting it in amongst a crowd or those type of things. But I remember teaching people how to film videos essentially 9 years ago or even 5 years ago, and you'd give them a camera and it's like, you have to teach them how to manual focus. And it's like, that is such a, for some people, it's just like, if you've had a camera, you had a film camera, whatever the heck, if you're in a video, it's just such a normal skill. But for someone who's never touched a camera before, you're now teaching them that's like, okay, if you get this wrong, your video is essentially screwed. So just don't stuff it up. And there's, make sure you zoom in, make sure you double check, make sure your subject doesn't move, tape the floor. And it's just like all this steps, all this prep, all this skills for something that's now just simply been replaced with great autofocus. And it's been like just the most fantastic thing to be able to now, even as customers have moved from previous older DSLRs to more modern mirrorless with great autofocus, and they'd be like, so I have to manual focus? I'm like, no, just point at your subject and it's good. And it's just like seeing that like, oh, that's so easy. And so I love what a lot of technologies have done by making things a lot simpler and more accessible for people to create videos themselves. I think there is still a really big gap between what a true professional can do and what AI or technologies can accomplish now. And I think it's still quite a while way off because you notice that gap between like, hey, AI can get me 60% of the way there, but there is that polishing, there is that know-how, there's that creative aspect, there's that technical skill, that's the experience needed to be able to actually make things sound great.
What's an example of a skill or a gap that you see so a really great producer or DOP can execute on that AI is way off from doing?
Yeah, so I'll give you two. So the first one's like AI voice cleaning. Yeah. And so if you just need a little bit of cleaning up for some of your audio, there's some great AI tools that can just do an easy clean. It sounds so crisp and professional and cuts out some echo. But if your audio, the more your audio gets worse, the worse the AI does. Like the AI will make it worse than it actually is. And so you get to this point where your audio goes from like, wow, that's so great to like, oh my goodness, what the heck did it do? Like it cuts out half your words and just makes it sound just horrendous and weird. Things that someone who is a professional would actually be able to go, oh, you need to do this, and be able to fix your audio and be fine. But since AI is just not there, it's just It can clean up a bit. It can't seem to fix bad audio, which in and of itself, you should be recording good audio. But like, there's that fine line between it.
Okay, so it's not like experience, it's almost like intuition, because the AI is trained on, billions of data points, which you could class as experience, but it doesn't know how to apply this experience, right? So it's almost like a human intuition.
Yeah, and I think as well, intuition comes really big into it, because like even just being in video, the difference when you're on set with someone like a gaffer or someone who's done it for 25 years and you're trying your best to rack your brain being like, why is this light just look a little bit off? And then this person just goes, oh, this, and just like tiniest angle, tiniest something, and you're like, if only I knew that. But it's like there is this gap in that experience. Another example is AI voiceovers.
Yeah.
Fantastic in a lot of use cases, especially like if you need temp voiceovers, if you need, things to, or just very easy scripts that you could kind of have someone say. But as soon as you start having more complex words, names, company names, like things like that, all of a sudden, or like even just an idea in your head of like how you want the flow of a script to go, AI can't do that. Like, so it just spits out what it gives you, and it's like, are you happy, or you want to re-roll the dice and see if it'll, be a better or worse thing. So it's a lot of gambling on whether you're going to get a good voiceover that's going to fit your video. So good for some, but it doesn't replace a professional voiceover artist who, you can kind of explain what you're thinking in your head, and they go, oh, you mean this? And you go, yes, that's what I mean. And they give you a great delivery of lines.
So with all the tech that we've got now and what you're currently using versus, let's say, 5 years ago, what percentage of time do you think you're saving in efficiency because of these tools?
With the tools I'm using, a lot of time. I think the main ones are like just AI transcription for a video, and captions is like, man, like I remember doing captions by hand, and it's like, frick, like you're literally typing like, hi, my name is Luke. And like, I occasionally like still get fed like, videos from like Premiere, DaVinci like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's like, quick way to make captions. Step 1, make a text box. Step 2, write all the words you're trying to, and you're like, oh frick, like, are you kidding me? Like, we used to do this, like,
yeah.
And just being able to click a button and just have a transcript be created saves so much time. And now with the evolution of it being able to caption your video as well, it just speeds up a workflow like crazy. So that's one example, but there's so many little examples that it just essentially just makes things quicker.
So is it reasonable to say 40% improvement?
Compared to me typing out captions by hand,
captions specifically,
thousands of percent. Yeah. But yeah, it definitely has sped up my workflow and enabled me to create a lot more video content a lot quicker. So it's really like well over 40%,
Interesting. So what's a tool that you're both using every single day? Andras, have you got a tool that you...
I guess like there are no miracles here, because there are some of the main large language models and prompt to image generators. So obviously we have ChatGPT as the current leading one, I think so, trained on billions of data sets. But there are, I think the main difference is, tool is one thing, but the different applications is another thing. So for me, the way I use AI, let's say, is in the creative process, is when it comes to storyboarding or story development. So, but okay, we can even start from the beginning. As I mentioned previously, research, big thing. I can, when I do a commercial work, I have a brief and I have a company and we have a commercial goal. So I can literally put all this input into and process it with AI. Then I can get all the perspectives, then I can get all the different takes on it from AI as options and ideas. And then I can decide how I want to curate it, and using my intuition and using the context I know and about the company and the client, I can decide what direction I want to go to. And then after that, let's say with storyboarding, the biggest change is that the feedback loop is really sped up now. And what I mean by that is, let's say previously you storyboarded, you imagined the storyboard frame, then you sent it to a storyboard artist with your instructions, they sketched it out for you and you got back something. And if it wasn't what you expected, then you asked for some revisions, they sent it back again, and it was a bit closer to what you thought. Now you can give a prompt, you get something immediately, and then you can immediately change it and basically for me now, that also I can also start thinking from very different perspectives, and I can experiment and try and test things within matters of second. And maybe my initial thought, what I had, what I wanted to see in frame, start shifting, and I start exploring totally different options. And considering all of those, I come to a conclusion what I think would work best. So feedback loop really sped up. The whole creative research process and data processing, considering all the information we have available, that really sped up, and just giving me very different perspectives from very different angles is also an amazing help, because I don't need a team of creatives to bounce ideas back and forth. I can literally just sit down and try different angles and see which one I like the most. But what I want to emphasize is that this is all amazing. Insane efficiencies, both in the creative process, both in the production process. It's all amazing. But it's all trained on existing patterns and existing data. So if we want to create something truly authentic, then we want to create new patterns and new correlations. And you can ask ChatGPT to even do that. You can even ask ChatGPT to do associations between different disciplines, which is great. But still, it takes you maybe, it can do the tedious manual labor, some of it for you, but it's always going to be up to you to curate it, to know how to use it, to use your intuition, to use your skills, use your direction, and add that remaining bit to take the project home and create something truly outstanding and unique. So it is a very helpful tool, but it shouldn't replace you as the creative in the process. It should be a synergy and evolution of the process.
Well, you know what's interesting? Have you guys watched Mad Men?
Yes.
The TV series?
Yes.
I only just started watching.
I watched it many times.
No,
yeah.
I only just started watching it like recently. I'd never seen it before. I started binge watching it. And it's set, late 50s, early 60s, advertising agency. And it's probably true to life based on what we know in production, but they have a team of copywriters, a whole team of sketch artists, a whole team of account managers, a whole team of salespeople. Then they have Don Draper, the creative director, overseeing all of these moving parts and how it all works. Realistically, if Don Draper was alive today in the present world, it'd be a very boring show because it would just be him on ChatGPT, right? Like, he can generate images, he can generate creative concepts, but then, like you're saying, it's the authenticity. So he still has to take all this information and sit down with it and turn it into something.
Come up with something truly authentic.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT any GPT models and AI models basically trained on what's already out there. And of course, and I'm not saying it's very rare when you completely reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Most of the times you look at something that's already out there, you take your own spin on it as inspiration, or you look at totally different niches and areas and then see how they would work together, let's say. Like, you can combine very different sources of inspiration and then combine them together into something new. That works as well. But I still think you have to have that authentic intuition you add to it. And also, another very important part is why we do creatives from any perspective, and most importantly from a commercial perspective. We want people to take some kind of action. And what's the best way to get people to take some kind of action is to connect with them emotionally and to move them emotionally. And what do you need to be able to do that? You have to understand them. And how can you understand them? If you empathize with them. So
you have to be a human too.
Have to be a human to be able to empathize.
Yeah.
So
for now.
Maybe later they can synthesize and kind of mimic empathy.
Yeah.
But for now, what they do is see the already existing patterns and data that's out there, and they can kind of imitate that for one specific use case for you, and maybe that works for that specific use case. But if you truly want to connect, you need that level of empathy that only a human has, and you have to understand the context, and you have to add your unique, authentic stories and intuition to it, because that's what actually resonates with people. And what I also also feel is that the more and more we have generic AI-generated creatives and content, I really think there will be a level of counter movement, as with most things, that people actually will start craving truly authentic human pieces of art and content. That's something different from the generally homogeneous AI-generated like floods of new content that's going to be out there. And there is already a lot of it. But I guess then we have the question of, okay, what happens if we get to the stage when we can't distinguish? Pixel on screen is pixel on screen.
What is inevitable, I think.
What if it's getting that accurate at imitating human creations? Exactly, as you can't distinguish what's on screen from human-generated and AI-generated.
Look, we've already seen this with Sora, right? Sora gave us images that are 99% indistinguishable, but we haven't been able to test it to see if it promotes or provokes any emotion. If you can make a funny video with Sora, how will it know what funny is? You know, I don't know if it's going to be able to do that. But there may be a revolution where we see people come full circle. We already see it in special effects in Hollywood. I mean, Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer, could have easily made a CGI nuke detonation, but he did a real
on practicals.
A real world practical effect. And it's probably the reason why Jurassic Park, filmed in 1993, still holds up today. And the more recent ones, you just see it as CGI. You can tell it's CGI, right?
And I agree, exactly. So I think this progression of leveraging digital technologies, and now of course we have AI as well, but even before that, all the CGI, they're lately just cramming into every movie. What I feel it is to the detriment of true authentic stories and emotions. So people are just being desensitized by all these insane amount of stimuli they get from all the CGI and all the digital technologies or in the films that digital technologies enable. But I think that's exactly the reason why we only see a truly outstandingly amazing movie once in every 10 years, or not even, because from a commercial perspective, they don't necessarily need that level of authenticity. They just need people to buy the tickets. So it's actually easier to achieve to get people to buy tickets than to create something truly outstanding.
That's an interesting take. Luke, what's your take on all this?
There's a lot of points, a lot of stuff to digest. I think on one hand, it's, like you can't replace people's desire to see real things. I think that's like it. You look at like the film photography kind of like resurgence all of a sudden. It's like people want that kind of sense of authenticity. They want that sense of real. And I think even like kind of the surprising move of a lot of movies to all lead their marketing as, no VFX were used, even though like almost every one of them in the past few years all used VFX and blatantly lied about it. That was all their marketing campaign. You could hear the crowds cheer, and genuine applause of people, like when someone announces, "Oh yeah, there's no VFX in this."
That's true, actually.
And so it is. I think it comes down to what use. Like, what's the Sure, Sora can replace images almost exactly lifelike, but anyone can take a great picture these days. But it's just like what separates great photographers from the rest of us taking pictures is you can feel intention behind it. Like you can feel that there's something there. It's how you make things, and all of those things resonate with different people. And it's not about, there's no right formula for it. So I think AI revolves around there being a formula to create blank. You put in a prompt, it gives you a reasonable something on the other side of it. But it's those things that are open to interpretation, story, all this stuff. It's that I think are all fantastic. And I think as well, it's if your goal is to want to be able to see or experience a great story, at the end of the day, it's is it an issue if AI wrote a great story for you to enjoy? It's kind of because most people can't write great stories to begin with.
Yeah.
We have, obviously many gifted writers and But by the time we see, like as Andras said, like, you know, you only have a movie that perhaps resonates with you once every couple of years, or a TV show that resonates deeply with you once every couple of years. And so like if the trend of AI is that every show that comes out is actually going to be able to, not every, but like, you know, there's an increase of storytelling because maybe AI is smart enough to tell the producers, actually, this is a really terrible idea. Like you see so many great films get absolutely slammed because of, you know, decisions or blah, blah, blah. But like, man, if AI could actually be like, no, this is, so don't take those notes. Like, you know, this is actually where good story is going to be if we stick to this path and kind of have perhaps more concrete evidence. Because like at the end of the day, how does a writer argue story to a producer who's thinking money, or an exec, like the studio house or whatever, that they're just thinking finance and they think these things worked, and someone's like, no, what about this? So maybe AI helps in that space of like actually being able to, you know, give more tangible data to recommendations to be able to break story and go like, no, because of this formula, and it synthesizes every movie that's ever been created and goes like, no, this actually follows the trend of the top 100 best films, and is able to actually give good story some type of backing up. That's so like it's a wild world, but I think once again we get in this position of like AI replaces us. That's like where our heads are at and stuff like that. We're just stuck in that kind of place, and maybe it does. Who the heck knows? But like I think if we just think of AI as a supporting tool, and let's just assume, and we know it's 100% not true, but like assume that AI could almost do anything. It's like then we can just make AI support us, like in a lot of ways, and actually be able to create a lot of things that we need to be able to create better stories and better worlds and better film and better movies and better commercials and better just everything.
I think the commercial reasons are always going to be there. I think Hollywood died commercially. I think it was 2002 or 2003. 2002 or 2003 was the last year that there were more original script movies in the box office than there were sequels or remakes. Everything after 2002, 2003 was sequels and remakes. So commercial decisions determined this long time before AI came into place. So does AI help it? Bearing in mind, AI was also developed with commercial choices in mind. So wouldn't it be cool if it could come full circle like that?
Yeah, it would be. Like I think it's like, yeah, it's like people are worried about AI. People should be worried about people, like, and themselves and stuff like that. Like it's like we've created enough bad stories not to worry about AI. Like, you know, AI is going to make worse stories. It's like it's pretty hard to make worse stories than some of the stuff we're putting out now. So it's kind of like it just is that type of thing.
Or maybe that's the trend. Maybe bad stories become popular because they're so human. And
at the same, like there's plenty of like. Is it The Room that like there is, or like The Birds, I think the movie. No,
that was a bad one.
Not the Hitchcock one or whatever that was, the other one.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, going down to some of the worst movies of all time. But because of that, it's also the biggest cult watch ever, because it hits a unique thing. It's like, who would have thought that it's like someone intending to make a great movie who makes a terrible movie turns out to actually make an incredible movie resonating with people because of how bad it is.
It's like Sharknado. Have you seen Sharknado?
Oh yeah, that whole I haven't, but like yeah, there's whole
like
genre
six of them.
Terrible, wild, like disaster movies that make no sense whatsoever. But there is that piece that it resonates with a niche audience that they love it.
Yeah, that's it. Like I wonder if an AI could write a deliberately bad, like Sharknado style movie right now and get away with it. Probably could. I don't know, because unintentionally it is bad right now, so to that degree.
But at the same time, like maybe it makes it good and therefore ruins it. Like, you know, it's that type of thing. Like, you know, if people stumble upon, like I think are very bad judges of what we think is good and bad, because it's so, everyone is so intrinsically like like opinion, like we're lost in our own ideas of good and bad. So it's very hard for us to step out of that. And like we can look at things commercially and we have to base it on something. So typically we base it on views or numbers or money or some type of tangible thing to determine whether it's good or bad. But I think, I'm not sure it was Andras or someone was like, just before, it's like, what, depending on your metrics, like if you're like your metrics of likes or doesn't necessarily make it good, or it makes it not even good, but like it makes it enjoyable for some people.
Yeah.
But it's like if they weren't your target audience to begin with, it's like it doesn't. What does that mean? Like what? Like so, I think if we're really thinking about, I think it just hopefully people almost use AI as like a reason to push back on a lot of commercialized, and we're basically stuck in Hollywood right now and stuck in like movies and things you want to see, and we haven't even really dived into the more other side of video production and everything else in content. But like maybe people just want more authentic things, and therefore it drives people to create more authentic things, and it drives budgets to be pushed more towards authentic things, and perhaps it gives bigger light to indie scenes, or maybe AI helps more indie studios be able to create better things, and maybe the AI workflows in VFX can bring the budgets down, so VFX becomes more accessible for people who sub $5 to $50 million budgets type of thing. All of a sudden can actually tell their unique story with a level of excellence that was previously unknown to them or unavailable to them.
That's interesting. I think creativity is like a barrier in a sense that stops AI taking over in the video production space. Where it probably doesn't have a barrier is the corporate side of video production space. So like you, I use ChatGPT every day. I've made my own GPT, pre-trained it on months worth of data, so that it specializes in what we do specifically. And I think with the questions that I ask it and with its pre-qualified knowledge, it acts as my assistant. Like it acts as an employee that I would have in the way that I, run my work and everything else. So how long before that starts replacing maybe junior roles or admin roles or roles that really require research and collating of data, where you may eventually see a high-level decision maker with multiple AIs or one AI that can do it all, just making all these decisions.
So you mainly use it for like as support in research and in different for these business decisions.
Everything. So because you can feed it data, if I feed it a P&L sheet from the last year, I can ask it to identify the biggest expenses and ways to, improve on efficiency, something that may have taken me an hour worth of looking through 300 line items that we have like on the budget sheet, to try and identify and tweak those numbers and look at the total in the end. It could do this, and save me hours worth of time. And that's just one task. Everything from writing a job description based on what it already knows about what I do, because it's that custom GPT, it is acting like an employee, but a supercharged employee that can do what I say straight away and get it done. And again, it is 90% of the way there. I still have to look at it, I still have to review it, and I still have to, sometimes it's wildly off, but it gives me enough momentum to make those kind of changes. So yeah, from a I guess operational business perspective, I can't see what's going to hold it back.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that's a good point, that operational and business is more like the factual, quantifiable side of doing things. And nobody is going to be someone who has access immediately for billions and billions of data points in any given topic.
Of course.
So AI is definitely ahead of us, probably already in that sense, processing data and information. And I think there we can distinguish the factual information data from the human creative emotion side of things. So I guess, but there is a very interesting overlap there, because there is data and factual information, but also emotions. But emotions trigger, and they trigger each other. It works both ways.
They trigger different decision-making processes as well.
Yep, 100%. And the best, if you look at it, the best example, I guess, for it is the stock market.
Yeah.
Stock market is information, is data, is numbers and quantifiable. But what moves the stock market is human emotion. So, and the same way, I guess, when we create a commercial creative piece with the intent to move emotions and change some quantifiable metrics, that's again the same overlap of arts and science, technically, if you look at it from this way.
This is so interesting. We're almost out of time, but it's like we've come to the conclusion that AI is a very powerful tool for many things. The biggest, or one of the most popular things that it is marketed as, is a creative tool. But at the same time, it seems like creativity is the one thing that is holding it back from taking over everything. It sounds like there's a safe barrier there that you can't quite overcome with the existing technology of today. So I wonder, at what point, if it does continue to get better, at what point do you both think that we're going to revolt against this? Do we have to see a series of entirely AI-built movies before we say that this is terrible, we want to go back to humans? At what point do we decide we want to go back to human creativity?
I love how like the benchmark is AI movies. It's like AI can do whatever it wants, but until it makes a movie, then it's like, then we put our foot down and it's like, how dare it?
How dare you? Yeah, it could be anything though. Like at what point do we realize, like, obviously taking jobs, there's always going to be that play of yes and no, but at what point does AI interfere with creativity where humans get fed up with it and say, no, we want authentic human storytelling?
That's a really, like, to throw a kind of a span in the works, it's like, when are people going to stand up and say they're sick of the stories that they're hearing now that are created by people? And like the cultural, and like speaking like more movie point of view, like the cultural, just stories perhaps being told, like, you know, I love classic stories like mythologies and all that. Like, I think there's just such power resonating with them. So like, that's, you know, typically where I go to really enjoy myself with great story and stuff. But like, you know, when, I guess once again, entirely subjective, but like, you know, if we think AI taking over creativity is the bad thing, it's like, I think like people do a bad job of creativity just normally. So I think like, you know, when are people gonna put their foot down generally and decide what they want to see, if that's even a good thing that someone does? Like for me, looking at, you know, movies that have come out recently and been like, oh, you know, I hate them all, I wish it was more like this or something, or is just a very me thing. And it's like, maybe there's just a huge market for AI-driven creativity that actually does amazing things. Or maybe it's always capped and needs that level of expertise to be able to shape it into something. Because ultimately it's like, you know, for the layperson using ChatGPT, pretending they're an expert, it's like there's just such obvious gaps that they're missing, that they have no idea they're missing because they just don't know what they don't know. And they think they've got it all. And all of a sudden there's just like this huge missing things that they just never thought about that is crucial to be able to create what they think they're trying to create.
That's awesome. Well, let's summarize because we are just about out of time, but it seems like the future is still unknown. I think it sounds like it could go either way right now. So this whole podcast has been about nothing. No, it's very interesting, but we have to call it a wrap, guys. So thanks for coming on. We'll have to
do a part 2.
We have to do a part 2. This could be part 10,000, I think. But
this is the introduction to our actual podcast.
This is the intro to the actual
episode. And I'm pretty sure even a couple of months from now, we will know way more than we know right now with the pace of the
Let's revisit this in 2 or 3 months and see what happens. All right, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
Thanks so
for
much.
having us.
Pleasure.